everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. This is Joe Moore coming at you from Breckenridge, Colorado. Today on the show, we have Nick and Tyler from the Dosed movie crew. They're here today to talk about the next edition of Dosed. Personally, Dosed was, I think, one of my favorite psychedelic documentaries to come out in the last couple of years. Really, a great personal story, healing and self-discovery story, and a real roller coaster ride. And I think Tyler and Nick did a great job with their main character, Adrianne. And I really just appreciate that film and the care and attention to detail they put in. And yeah, today we're here to talk about the past. How did that film go? And in the future, like what's coming in this next film. The next film follows some of the palliative psilocybin therapy that TheraPsil is doing in Canada. So it's pretty exciting. So yeah, I hope y'all enjoy this. And I really, if you haven't seen Dosed, go watch it. We have links in our show notes to like all the different platforms you can watch it on, and it's incredible. Even if it costs a little bit of money to rent, please do share it with some friends or something. A little watch party and discussion around it. It's just that good. I really, really do endorse it highly. So thanks to Tyler and Nick for coming on again. And I'm really grateful that I think it was Tyler and Adrianne actually joined us for navigating psychedelics recently. So that was really a pleasure too. So really appreciate getting to know them a bit and understanding where they're going. So yeah, I think that's it for now. So Dosed and Dosed 2 coming, hopefully, I don't know when the timeline was, but hopefully in the near future. So enjoy the podcast, and just a few words before we go to the other side. So we're about a month out, a little less than a month out before the next edition of Navigating Psychedelics for Clinicians and Therapists. If you want to join us, please do. We are selling seats, and it will sell out. So please do come join us. I just got word that a lot of people have been using the fact that they took our class in their resumes and applications to different schools and for jobs. So people have been getting admitted into different universities, especially with our training, and then also getting some really great job opportunities. The kinds of jobs people are getting is pretty exciting. So really thankful that we've been able to help folks that much. So check it out over at psychedeliceducationcenter.com. And I think that's it for right now, and we'll see you on the other side. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. Today we are joined by Tyler Chandler and Nick Meyers, the makers of Dosed. How are you guys doing today?
Awesome. Yeah, doing really well. Thanks, Joe. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So your film Dosed, I'm not getting paid to say this, was one of my favorite psychedelic documentaries that I watched last year. I talked about it a lot. I actually even had to defend it because some people said it looked fake. I was like, no, that looks about as real as I've ever seen. I don't know why you think it looks fake.
That's a very odd comment. I
Totally.
heard that from one person, and everyone else sort of turned to this person at a theatrical screening and were like, "What are you talking about?" So it's not a common held belief by any means. It's the real deal, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. It was about as real as I could even have imagined. Like that progression, the kind of like few of the secret things that I won't leak. Like I advise everybody to watch it. And you guys joined me before with Adrianne.
We would implore them to. It is a really interesting story, and it was something that we didn't have any idea what we were getting ourselves into, as we didn't really have any experience with psychedelics, and nor did Adrianne, the woman who stars in Dosed, if you will. We follow her journey from depression, anxiety, addiction, using a couple different psychedelics all the way through to sobriety and being free of a medical system that she was trapped in that wasn't working for her. And that's a common story for so many people. So dosemovie.com, got to check it out.
And what kind of platforms is it available on? Can they rent it on like Vimeo or where else?
Yeah, Vimeo was the first one that we were able to get it launched onto. And then because of COVID and a lot of delays and backlogs, it took a little bit longer, but it's now available on Apple, iTunes, and that would be in 80 countries, Amazon Prime, Video to rent or own in the US and the UK, and Google Play also in US and UK, and a platform called Voodoo, which is only available in the United States.
Awesome. Yeah. So, how do you like to describe it? It follows Adrianne trying to get healed, right?
Yeah, it's about a woman, Adrianne, who has had years of medications and regular treatment options fail her, and so she's sort of suicidal and has nowhere left to turn. So she, in her last ditch effort, explores underground illegal psychedelic psychotherapy and ends up, battling her anxiety, depression, and drug addiction that way. It's a very gritty and kind of harrowing journey, but ultimately important and beautiful and uplifting.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's important to highlight that people are so desperate that they are breaking the law to heal in many countries.
Yeah, well, there aren't any other options in some cases.
Right.
And the unfortunate thing is the barriers to entry, and the fact that it is illegal scares people away. Psychedelics have been stigmatized for decades. People literally think they can make you go crazy, jump out a window. They're just as bad as heroin or other hard drugs that are highly addictive, and that psychedelics themselves are addictive. So, what's the point in replacing one drug with another? And of course, they're outside of the medical system that we're used to. So, it doesn't seem to make sense to a lot of people. And it's all totally understandable and fair. But what we learned in the last 2 or 3 years while we were following Adrianne and editing the film together and meeting all of these wonderful people working with psychedelics in the underground community in Vancouver and talking to people around the world is that like basically all of that is untrue. And, this psychedelics absolutely need to be another tool in the toolbox for people on a path to happiness and sobriety, or maybe they're not even addicted, but just if they're going through depression or anxiety and stuff like that, it's a nice way to reset and move forward in life without kind of getting trapped on pharmaceutical medications that for a lot of people don't work, unfortunately. And for some they do, and that's great, but why not have all the options available, right?
Yeah, it's totally ridiculous that people have to do something that's illegal in order to help themselves. We were a little bit nervous about filming our friend taking illegal drugs. What if something went wrong and, something bad happened to her? Or what if we had some sort of criminal consequences from law enforcement? Those seems like very unlikely events, but you're always a little bit nervous. And I think a lot of people are even more nervous than we were, and they would just not get that treatment or not know where to turn, not even know about it, not feel confident that it's legitimate. A lot of people sort of accept medical authority, and if there's not any consensus from the medical community that this is a good, safe option for people, then people are scared of it. Whereas the funny thing is, the kind of the paradox there, or the thing that doesn't make any sense about that, is that there are known dangers to all drugs that people use or to treat conditions like mental illness or addiction. One of the common concerns about Iboga is that it could be fatal if administered improperly. And Iboga is a psychedelic that is featured in Dosed that is kind of a miraculous drug in that it helps people not be physically addicted to opiates like heroin. So it's wildly important and has incredible applications and potential for humanity to end suffering and everything like that. But if it's administered incorrectly, and if you have certain health conditions, it could be fatal. But like that could be said about almost any, or not almost any, but many, many types of drugs that people use habitually within the medical system legally. So it's kind of there's something nonsensical about it there that nevertheless is often sort of parroted by the medical community, like, oh, that's unsafe. We can't use that because there have been some instances in which people suffered harm because of it. Well, something like benzodiazepines, which is a commonly prescribed anxiety medication, has like huge amounts of literature about how dangerous it is. It's one of the most studied medications, to my knowledge, that there are, but they're still prescribed. So it does make a lot of sense to me.
So coming into this first project, you said you two didn't really know what to expect and you were a little nervous. Like, what was your kind of level of psychedelic experience like going into filming?
This is Tyler. I had only one prior experience with psychedelics, and that was just sort of a recreational dose with a few friends. And coincidentally, that all kind of lined up and led to Dosed happening because, I had that experience and I didn't try psychedelics my whole life because I was kind of afraid of the stigma around having a bad trip and stuff like that. Didn't know what to expect and didn't really feel like exploring that. And then I actually had a really awesome time. It was fun. It was enlightening. And my perspective shifted immediately. And then I saw an article shortly after that from Imperial College that was saying how magic mushrooms specifically can help people with depression, right? And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And so I was talking with Nick about that and potentially doing a documentary about that, but we were working on a totally different documentary in development at that time. But then Adrianne messaged me from a really low point in her life. And I had then just asked her if she'd ever tried psychedelics. And next thing you know, Nick and I and Adrianne all agreed that, she would want to try this. So she wanted to try this. And we thought, well, we were thinking about making a documentary about this. And Adrianne was kind of like, well, why don't you film me? And so we filmed her, and that's all shown in Dosed. We didn't know exactly the correct therapeutic clinical trial way to do it. We were being very cautious and, didn't do it exactly right. But the great thing is, even not doing it correctly, Adrianne experienced a profound benefit and it blasted her out of her depression. And that sent us on this wild journey with her exploring more mushrooms and then leading to Iboga to help her with her mental health and addiction issues. And it was a wild roller coaster ride, that's for sure.
Yeah. And I had tried mushrooms one time before. And, all my friends were making sort of jokes and giggling. I think we did about a gram. Yeah. And I was making the jokes as well, but like something was going on behind, inside my brain. I was like thinking about like life decisions and choices and like sorting out different things I've been kind of wondering about what to do, what choices to make in certain areas of life. And so when I heard about this application for psychedelics, I thought, oh, that makes sense, because I noticed that it was a substance that seemed to promote insightfulness, if that's even a word. And I thought, yeah, I could see how this would work for any kind of personal growth or development. So I wasn't surprised, but still at the same time, it feels like it could be dangerous because you're taking somebody who's already suffering from mental illness, already feeling suicidal, already addicted to drugs, and then you're putting another drug into that environment. It seems sort of a little sketchy,
counterintuitive.
But then we learn more about it, and we understand that that's actually quite a good application for it if done correctly with the right set, setting, and dose.
Right. Was there beyond the Imperial articles? Was there anything else that was kind of influential? It was like YouTube, or kind of were you able to make contact with therapists first?
Yeah, there was like a research phase before we decided to try it, and it was
Hmm.
just trying to figure out what was going on. There was actually also a clinical trial that was supposed to begin in Vancouver that Adrianne had just heard about on the radio prior to us having this conversation. So it was good timing in the sense that she was familiar with it, and so it was something that she was open to doing, open to trying, and then we ideally wanted her to just join a clinical trial and we could document her before and after that, and maybe some other people as well. But the clinical trial got delayed and delayed again. And, she was in a life or death situation because she was using street drugs, and they're laced with fentanyl, and it's extremely dangerous. There's a lot of overdoses and bad things happening with tainted drug supply. So yeah, she decided she wanted to try it on her own. She didn't want to wait for the clinical trial, and that's what happened when we moved forward. We were, I guess, quite cautious in the beginning because we sort of thought, oh, we didn't, she shouldn't maybe do too much, mushrooms, for example, right, at one time, because of the potential consequences that you hear about. In hindsight, knowing what we know now, we probably would have done things differently, but the way things turned out, it's probably all exactly how it needed to go for her particular journey. Just starting out a little bit cautiously, doing it a couple times, and then luckily we met some people in the community in Vancouver, the psychedelic community, and they really took us under their wing. They were willing to be involved in a documentary, which was amazing. So we could film them openly and include them and just continue following this journey. And then they started helping with Adrianne and doing higher doses in a better set and setting, and then moving towards Iboga specifically for opioid addiction. And it's interesting, even with like the amount of research that we did leading up, we didn't see anything very specific that said, oh, you're supposed to listen to this particular kind of playlist and put a sleep mask on, and they're using synthesized psilocybin of this amount, and that's the equivalent to this amount of organic dried mushrooms. That information somehow, perhaps it was available, but it wasn't readily available when we did our research. So the way we did it was, as I said earlier, maybe not exactly correct, but she still had the profoundly beneficial experience. And I think that's because her intentions were there. She was ready to make a change in her life. And anybody that's looking to get past depression, anxiety, and or addiction, you need to have that shift and realize like it's time to make a change and move forward. And we hear this a lot, like sometimes there's loved ones and parents, they want to like bring their kid or their loved one to this type of treatment, and sometimes that can definitely work, but the person themselves must be prepared themselves. Like they need to really find it themselves to have the best results, as opposed to being dragged to a treatment with psychedelics, because it might not stick the same way that it could otherwise, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the set and setting. um, all right, it's so simple to say set and setting, but it's really a big, complicated thing, and all of your prep
Mm-hmm.
goes into it. All of the individual goes into it, with all of their past and present accounted for. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
like there's certainly a lot there, and yeah, the more attention you give that, likely the better the results long term. Absolutely.
We Gareth from Dosed, he doesn't even prefer to work with people under 30 years old because often people haven't come to terms with their drug use and they don't want to quit until they've had like a period of time where they're struggling, because just from experience, if someone's younger, they might still have like a little bit of a romance with their drug of choice, and they might not really be ready to get off of it. So it's not just a psychedelic that can help you with an issue like drug addiction. It's also like an actual willingness to change and do the work before and after, which is not to say that he wouldn't work with someone earlier. It's just it's less effective or to work with someone younger in his experience as a facilitator of this, right? So it's really so much more than just the drug. It's the whole attitude and preparation and the sequences of psychedelic psychotherapy and aftercare after the experience.
Huh. That's interesting. And that was the gentleman who was the Iboga facilitator.
One of them. It's the first one that Adrianne talks to in the film. So
okay,
not the one that gave her the treatment. That's Mark, and he's been trained in Africa using the Bwiti tradition in Gabon, and he ended up being the main person who was able to like accommodate Adrianne.
Just due to scheduling.
Yeah. Like this was all like with a documentary. It's just you're following. You never know what's around the next corner. We thought for a while that Adrianne was going to do a treatment with Gareth, and then he was just booked for so long, and then he recommended us get in touch with Mark or something like that, and then Mark, because he does like groups instead of just one person at a time, he was able to get Adrianne into a group session a lot quicker, and that just made a lot of sense for the timing for her.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Like I really appreciate the Iboga community. It seems really well connected. And because a lot of them come from that addiction space, like they have a lot more in common with their clientele. And I think it increased compassion even too.
Oh, totally. And just the extent that the people in the Iboga community will go to help people it's just totally amazing and commendable. The amount of work and effort they put in to help people that are wanting to be helped, that are actually reaching out. It's amazing.
Yeah. So how was the film received generally? Like I expect you did pretty well overall.
Yeah, it was great. We won 5 awards during the film festival circuit, and we got invited to something like 12 or 13 film festivals, and then it turned into a theatrical release, which is not particularly common for an independent film, especially a documentary. But Nick and I put on a few screenings ourselves, and we realized quite quickly that we were selling out theaters, so people are very interested in this topic, and also the film festivals were selling out as well. So we did that ourselves independently, like booking theaters and having crowds show up. And then we were scheduled to actually fly to New York City and kick off with a distributor around March 20th, 2020. So you can imagine we had to cancel that due to COVID as the borders got closed down and the crowd sizes for events got decreased daily from 50,000 stadiums to 500 to 250, and we're like, oh, can we still go? The theater's 300 people, and then the next day it's 50, and then the next day it was 0. So unfortunately that side of it was canceled, and then that just led us to like an online release. And yeah, it's well received, really nice reviews and write-ups by like RogerEbert.com and Forbes and stuff like that. Of course, not every single person is going to like agree with this for whatever reason. I find it actually a little frustrating, but I can just go back just a few years in time, and if I had heard about a film like this, not knowing what I know now, I would probably be like, yeah, right, that sounds hokey or kind of like bullshit. So there's a couple of those people here or there, but for the most part, people like watch and understand and like see the difference that it made in Adrianne's life, and obviously how that could be applied to other people. And when we're interviewing leading experts in this space from around the world, Rosalind Watts, Rick Doblin, Paul Stamets is in there as well, and then a bunch of people that facilitate this stuff. It's it's something that's it's helping a lot of people to understand it, and we've had some amazing feedback from people that it's really like helped them understand the potential of psychedelics. People even telling us, emailing us after, or coming up to us after screening saying they want to change their career and learn how to like work with this. Maybe they've been a counselor for years and now they want to get into using psychedelics, and like, how can we get involved? And it's like, well, like check out MAPS or MAPS Canada or other organizations and get involved that way. And then yeah, it's nice. And people email us all the time saying how it's like changed their life and given them hope. And they're connecting with psychedelic communities or decriminalization organizations to meet people that are involved and volunteer themselves. And hopefully that would potentially lead to them being able to get access for themselves or a loved one or something like that as well.
Yeah, it was an unfortunate event when COVID hit and affected so many people all around the world, and everything that they're doing personally and their businesses and everything. And for us, what Tyler was talking about is it was not just a screening; it was like an entire theatrical tour around North America that had been scheduled with through a distribution company, and that was that had been canceled by COVID. So that was an unfortunate thing, because really what we're seeing was there's an incredible appetite for this film. The screenings that we put on sort of independently, it was more than just a couple. It was hundreds all around the world, many different continents and stuff like that. And they were like selling out almost exclusively. They were selling out. So we were really excited to see where it was going to take us. And it unfortunately got canceled. So we put the movie online, but more so than a better judge of what it's doing and the impact that it's making is not like a negative comment here or there. It's the fact that we have emails in our inbox every single day from people that are expressing to us just that the film changed their lives, that it set them on a different path away from their struggles and towards potential solutions. So it's very, very good feeling to be a part of something like that.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah. There's so many projects yet to be executed on. And you two sharing your story, I hope, makes a lot of people more brave to help share other stories. Like there's plenty of stories left to tell,
Oh, yeah, always.
Yeah. And like one of the things we've noticed is that this documentary, Adrianne's story, essentially helps people open up and realize that it's okay to talk about mental health. So it's always stigmatized. We have like national advertisement campaigns that come out once a year. It's called Let's Talk in Canada. And I'm sure there's similar things in the United States and all around the world, because mental health is a problem that is actually, it's getting worse and worse over the last few decades, even though the pharmaceutical industry is supposed to have all the answers, but why is it still getting worse and worse is the question, right? But there's these campaigns, and it's always about let's talk and don't feel shame, don't hide it, open up, and really it's about discussing these things that can be healing. And even if somebody doesn't have access to psychedelics, or due to whatever reason, not being able to find somebody to do them with safely, or that they're illegal still, or any of these possible obstacles, if they have a conversation with somebody about what they're going through, that could potentially be enough to get them through what they're going through. And sometimes it's just feeling your feelings and opening up and talking about them. And maybe you need to have a cry, but you've been holding it back for months or years or whatever. But if you feel your feelings and understand that it's like everybody's going through similar stuff all the time, or at least periodically, or they know somebody that is, it can be quite healing. And so there's so many things involved with helping people live a happy life. Psychedelics could be one additional thing, hopefully soon, as more legalization and clinical trials and studies are done. But yeah, it's about opening up and realizing, like, it's better to talk about things than to hold everything in. And we see that with Dosed. After people watch it, they're just totally open to sharing their stories, even in front of crowds at a Q&A with hundreds of people there. So it's nice to see that.
Right. So it went so well that you're now working on another film project.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about that one?
Yeah. We're working on the sequel to Dosed. It's such an important thing for society, is the ongoing decriminalization, legalization of psychedelics and their use for therapeutic purposes. There's a remarkable story happening out here in Canada, whereby psilocybin was exempted from being criminalized just for certain applications. So there's an exemption to the schedule as an illegal drug with no therapeutic benefit, and people are being allowed to consume it for end of life anxiety. And this has been, helped along by a company called TheraPsil, which is a nonprofit that is championing this sort of work. And so there were 4 patients initially that received exemptions for taking psilocybin, so they can take it with the aid of a physician or a therapist and not face any prosecution for it. This is quite groundbreaking, and we are following in this film. We're following a woman who was one of these first 4 patients as she takes psilocybin in response to her terminal illness. She's unfortunately been diagnosed with cancer, and as you can imagine, that diagnosis is a very, very difficult and traumatic thing, and it affects not only yourself but also your family. And she was faced with a lot of anxiety and just feelings of hopelessness, and that she somehow was abandoning her family or had done something wrong to her family, and worry about how they would be with potentially her passing away. And so that's kind of the story. It's similar to Dosed. It's very immersive. It's very much following a real human being and their life and their loved ones, and examining the effects of psychedelic psychotherapy on their individual situation. And there's also, it's going to be a deep dive into just sort of the history of psilocybin and just its applications. So that's what it's going to be about, and we're currently in development for it. We've shot some footage. It's incredibly powerful, and we're just seeking funding right now to make sure that the film can be finished.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it feels like you're going to get that funding. Like it's not too much of a hurdle currently.
I don't think. I think it will work. This is very important, and a lot of people believe in this topic, and we believe in this topic, and it's going to happen somehow. So if anyone's listening to this and they want to be part of that, shoot us an email through dosedmovie.com on the contact form, and let's talk about how we can do this together and make sure that this important story gets told. It's incredibly powerful what we filmed so far.
Yeah, well, it's wonderful. Really excited to learn more about that. The TheraPsil story is really compelling. And I imagine a number of other kind of Commonwealth countries have similar legal structure to Canada. So perhaps they can take on similar projects to this whole thing of lobbying the government for exceptions in a
Yeah,
similar way.
there's I mean, it's interesting when we started filming Dosed, that was before I would say like in Denver, that was maybe the first pillar to fall for the decriminalization movement. I could be mistaken, and perhaps there were other important things that have happened, but that seemed like a really, really big one because it was in the United States, which obviously is they have very strict drug policy and the DEA and the war on drugs and all of these things. And as we've seen for decades, it's not very effective. And the opioid crisis and mental health is just getting really bad and out of control in the United States and many other countries. So it's been awesome to see that the decriminalization efforts and legalization efforts have really been moving forward in a big way with Denver and then Oakland,
Santa
and
Cruz,
and
Oregon.
Yeah, Oregon recently as well. And then we have this happening in Canada and even in Vancouver. Our city council just voted to decriminalize all drugs so that they could help create a safe supply. And this would even apply to hard drugs. A lot of people do not understand what the point of this is. They think that it's bad because more people will use drugs or whatever. But in other countries that have done this before, it is shown to actually like reduce harm and help people sort of get over their struggles with addiction and drug use. And Portugal and I believe Switzerland are two countries that you can follow. If you go back 10 or so years, they decriminalized all drugs, and now there's a lot less problems with drug use and substance use disorder and stuff like that. And then they can reallocate instead of taking people to jail. They can, give people some care and reallocate the funding towards helping people instead of punishing people that need help.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. That's one of the fundamental issues with the drug war is, we're spending assets our resources incorrectly. And we really could be helping a lot of people instead of harming them further with incarceration and secondary harms from incarceration to, children, family structures, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, we hear things even with like people are in jail for, I don't know, 10, 20-year sentences or something like that for having marijuana in the United States. And this is like, obviously it's a product of the war on drugs, which is really it's like an attack on communities of color. And going back to like anti-war activists and stuff like that, they were just trying to find a reason to kind of mess with those people. And it's a sad situation, and it's absolutely absurd that somebody's in jail right now for having a joint or a bag of weed when it's now legal in many states, and it's actually legal in Canada now as well.
If Canada actually released a lot of prisoners as recreational use went legal?
I'm actually not 100% sure. I didn't hear that they did, but I heard, I just heard, and I can't remember if I'm getting it mixed up with the states or not, but I heard that they actually didn't release, but I don't know if that was in Canada or the United States. But there's some major, I guess, like hypocrisy or something going on right now where there are people serving these long sentences for marijuana, and now like in the very state that they're serving the sentence, it's totally legal. And that's, I don't know. It seems like they probably should go back and let the people have lighter sentences and let them out. But I'm not 100% sure what's going on.
I definitely didn't read that, but please correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe that's the case, but it's totally it would be stupid not to, if you think about it, right? Oh, we've now recognized that this medicine, which was arbitrarily made illegal, even though it has health benefits and it is like less harmful than substances that are legal, like alcohol, has now been made legal. Wouldn't the first thing that you would do is like go to offenders and and like pardon them for their criminal sentences. It doesn't make any sense otherwise. But yeah, is that what they're doing? Like,
there's a number of nonprofits working on it.
Yeah.
One that's taken some heat, Last Prisoner Project. They're getting a lot of funding. I don't really know the landscape super well, but I know they're active in it. But there's a lot of other groups as well, actively working on it. But yeah, just the hypocrisy is really troubling. Like what happens when, this stuff becomes legal? People are making huge fortunes, and people are still locked up, with no opportunities. In some places, people are getting liberated and getting some advantages. Like I think in some parts of California, I believe some Black folks in Los Angeles, when released from prison, were getting kind of licenses in order to open up shops, cannabis shops.
Yeah.
I've heard that kind of thing. But how do we make it even fair? Like, getting out of prison is one thing, but like, is there a way to make it more fair than just like, okay, cool, you're no longer in jail?
Yeah.
But it's a complicated thing that we need to discuss with politicians and lawyers and a lot more. It's not an easy answer. Start with getting them all out of jail, and then we can figure out the rest shortly after that. There's no reason anybody should be in prison for cannabis at this point, but I know that in the US, there's still plenty of people going to jail for cannabis.
Yeah.
Wild.
Right.
I just, I don't understand why it's taking people so long, like taking governments so long to just remove these barriers towards like plant medicine and cannabis use and stuff like that. It's so long overdue. And it's kind of a sad situation because we see it can help people. It can be used as medicine, just so long as it's done, whether it's psychedelics or cannabis use. Like, it's all, you all need, you need to have your safety protocol in place, right? And setting and dose. And obviously, a lot of people speculate that Big Pharma is lobbying to prevent it because they're making a fortune off of pharmaceutical medications that, they work for some people. So we have to acknowledge that, and they should be available, but they don't work for a lot of people. And they're a palliative medicine. They're designed for people to use them for the rest of their life, where psychedelics are not addictive and people don't want to use them for the rest of their life. Maybe they need one or two, big psychedelic sessions to have a transformative experience that can get their life back on track. And, maybe they circle back to it one or two more times, over the years. But really, like, you could have one experience and you could understand what you've been doing wrong in life and correct that coming out the other side with proper integration. And then, that doesn't make a lot of money though to have healthy people, does it? Right. So Big Pharma probably lobbying to prevent it from happening because they would lose customers. People would be getting off pharmaceutical medications that they take every day for the rest of their life, potentially, if they were able to have an experience with whether it's psilocybin or magic mushrooms or some other psychedelic.
Yeah, an example of that is from Dosed, where we learned that for every person that goes into a pharmacy here in Canada for their opioid replacement therapy, so their daily dose of methadone or morphine, if they're addicted to opioids, they get subsidized $8,000 per person from the government. And so obviously, if they have a couple thousand patients that are doing that habitually, or a couple hundred, or however many they have, that's incredibly huge amounts of money. So that's the cost that the government here in Canada is willing to subsidize for people that are hooked on opioids, to keep them on an opioid for the rest of their life. Whereas, as we know, Iboga or Ibogaine as a treatment option is it might cost $5,000 or $10,000 one time, and then you're off the opioids. So it's not about, we have the resources to do something about this, and we have the information that shows that this is an appropriate medicine, but it hasn't been implemented. And obviously you have to look at who gains by not having it implemented.
Right. I guess I'm in a more cautious camp with Iboga. I want to see some real good clinical data before we kind of scale it up, because I don't want a few heart attacks to get in the way of this stuff becoming prescribable and legal. I still also don't think people should be going to prison. But it's
Hmm.
like, how do we get the funding required to get better data around this stuff? And it's through films like yours and political lobbying where people realize, hey, we need to actually do something. Like this methadone situation isn't really a tenable situation long term. It's a great way to bleed the federal government, but it's not a great way to like cure people.
People feel really shitty on doctor prescribed opioids,
Yeah.
and a lot of people still use on top of them because they haven't dealt with the trauma,
Right.
and so that desire to escape still exists, and that's what Adrianne was going through, and that's what a lot of people are going through. And once you're hooked on the opioids, then you have the physical dependency as well. So methadone can save lives and help people potentially get off of the street drugs. And obviously, like, the street drugs are tainted with fentanyl and carfentanil, and that can lead to overdose. But yeah, people do not feel good when they're on methadone. It slows down slows down everything, I think. But your digestive system isn't working. You're gonna feel like super lethargic and tired all the
Mm.
time, and kind of sick, and you're still dependent on it. It's longer acting, but you still need to take it once every day. So wouldn't it be nice to be free of that and take nothing?
Something I read recently about methadone was suggesting it's like you're drinking some sort of nutritional supplement instead of having a meal. Like you're not getting high anymore, so it just feels a
No.
lot empty with methadone. But it's still like helping you manage. But it's just there's not the thing there that you went to before.
Yeah, it prevents withdrawal symptoms essentially, and then yeah, if people are still using on top, then they have to use more and more to feel anything, and it can get them into a pretty bad situation quite quickly. But to your
Right.
point, like with Ibogaine and Iboga, we do need more clinical research and clinical trials. But this has been studied for decades, and there have been an extremely low amount of deaths from people using Ibogaine and Iboga, and it's generally when there's a lack of medical testing. And if you do the proper medical testing and have a doctor or a nurse present, and all of that stuff, then you do mitigate the risks. And the last statistic that I heard, I think historically there's only been about 12 deaths from Ibogaine, and it's almost exclusively because the medical testing wasn't implemented or done properly. And if you just look at like the amount of people that are dying every year from opioid overdoses, it's something around 70,000 people in the United States alone. So
Right. 12
talking,
versus 70,000. Yeah.
what's that?
12 versus 70,000. It's like a very
I think it's like
stark
12
contrast.
historically, but I mean,
I think
whether
it's
those,
more than that, but it's, I
yeah.
don't know by how much. It's certainly not 70,000 though for
So
Iboga.
what you don't want to do is you don't want to have a careless approach where people are like, oh wow, I've heard about this now and I want to go do that. And we stress this very much in Dosed that
Mm.
you do need, like, is it not something to be done alone or without the proper testing, medical testing, and with a doctor or a registered nurse or somebody who's experienced with it
Right.
involved in somebody's treatment? Because the last thing we need as we move forward with like say the psychedelic renaissance or liberation of these medicines for people to use is to have some deaths or have things go wrong. So yeah, like, clinical trials and a safe place for everybody to do it makes sense, and the government should really be supporting and funding this for people who need it, because in the end, it would actually save the government a lot of money because they wouldn't have to be spending so much money fighting the opioid epidemic, which
Right.
costs, and I think it's like $500 million a year is the cost of the opioid crisis in America.
I don't know if you saw this, but MAPS recently put out an interesting kind of cost benefit analysis statement around MDMA for PTSD being cost effective.
Yeah.
And it's a similar argument here. Like, if you get to treat a person over the course of a year for their situation as opposed to for their whole lifetime, like, that's kind of an of course we're going to save money.
Yeah.
In the States, when we have all these weird insurance companies and weird laws, we've got some problems there convincing them, but I think we can do it. And not to mention like the methadone type lobbying groups kind of definitely pushing back against this thing. This is so much money in methadone.
Yeah, so much.
Yeah.
People should watch the documentary The Pharmacist.
The Pharmacist, all right.
Have you seen it?
No, what's the deal?
It's a 3-parter. That one has been picked up by Netflix, so I'm not sure if it's still on there or if it's sometimes they go on and off. But it's about a guy who happens to be a pharmacist whose son got mixed up in a drug deal and was murdered. And then he set out to find his son's killer. And what he discovered is this, I guess they call them pill mills, and doctors who are, or maybe not as much now because they're finally cracking down on it, but they were prescribing opioids to people in shady warehouses. Essentially, long and short of it is he's undercovering like the seedy underground of the opioid industry, and like there's certain states that the amount of opioids that were sent there would be enough to like dose every single person in that state like 10 times in a year, where people shouldn't even need it once in a year. But if you did need opioids because you broke your arm, you legitimately needed it, then it would just be like such a significantly smaller amount. But it just really highlights the abuse and then the greed. And there's actually some doctors who would just start doing this and, making a fortune by illegally prescribing opioids. Or, I mean, technically it may have even been legal for a time, but it was obviously shady.
Right.
But it was illegal because the prescriptions did not match the complaints of the people that came in asking for the drug. So they would come in with complaints that would require a much like lower level painkiller, or they were just like straight up looking to score drugs so they could resell them to addicts. And obviously doctors were facilitating that in order to and charging a premium and not taking enough time in the examinations, and subsequently getting rich at the expense of the misery of countless people.
Right. I heard of another documentary. I think it's like How to End a Drug Epidemic. It's a similar story. It was all in the state I was born in, Massachusetts. And yeah, they were able to track down like these high rates of prescription from certain doctors to track it back. And they found like this ring, this organized group of folks doing some crazy stuff. And it's really, really creepy, really dark.
It is very dark. And there's at the core of it, there's individuals that are being quite greedy because there's immense potential to make a lot of money. And it came down to even like the pharmaceutical drug reps that were like lobbying physicians to prescribe more opiates and, presenting an argument that they're extremely safe and not addictive and everything. And kind of having, there's one person in the documentary Tyler was talking about where he's a sales rep and he kind of knows that he's doing something wrong, but he's just making so much money that he kind of keeps on going down the path for a while.
Right. Yeah. It's a good counterpoint to these problems, right? Like the Iboga angle. There has certainly been some clinical research and there's been a lot of use. So we have a good data set. We just have to like kind of ask the right questions from the right people. And we can have a lot better data here. Like the safety angle for Iboga. Like I personally think people should probably go to a cardiologist and have their EKG read by a cardiologist.
Yep. That's
Yeah.
like standard protocol before. Adrianne had
Right.
that done.
Some people actually only get stuff interpreted by standard doctors, not specialists. And I think that's a problem.
Right.
And then, people with substance use disorders kind of treating each other.
Sure.
That's scary, but it certainly happens. And
Yeah.
people self-treat at home alone too. I personally know of one of my good friends actually got really insulted that I was covering the Iboga topic. He had some addiction issues and he actually lost a friend to him trying to self-treat with Iboga. So it's like a really wildly complex story.
Mhm.
But, I'm bullish. Like, I think we really need to do this. And have you bumped into the folks at VETS yet? The kind of Navy SEAL organization?
No, we haven't met them.
I think they're going to be looking pretty hardcore at Iboga for their populations. So, there's a lot of people in this fight. It's really great.
Yeah, we've heard of rumblings of getting clinical trials funded and off the ground for Ibogaine. Not
I think
necessarily
MAPS is
Iboga,
interested. I just don't know where they stand priority wise for them.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully it comes soon, but obviously it's expensive and
Right.
a lot of red tape and certain things need to be set up to do it properly.
It's tough for private companies to jump in because they're not going to make the same kind of killing they would if it was their own molecule and they could dominate it.
Yeah.
But, somebody needs to do it. Like if the drug's $7,000 a dose because they kind of modified the molecule, that really kind of complicates the story, especially when it could just be used from a plant or, an extract from the plant.
Yeah. That $7,000 price tag is too much for a lot of people. And that's why,
Right.
governments need to really analyze the benefits of getting people healthy and being like active, happy, healthy contributors to society versus stuck in a cycle of substance use.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're coming up to time here, but I want to make sure you two have enough time to kind of shout out links and mention things that you have going on. So feel free to drop a few things here if you want.
Sure. Yeah. The one thing we just like to say to anybody listening is if they're not, kind of connected with their local or nearby psychedelic society or a decriminalization initiative or something like that, is that they should just, hit Google and find theirs. And there's usually Facebook pages and lots of wonderful people to get to know. And, this would go for people who are looking for these treatments for themselves or others, or maybe, they're just looking to help and be involved with something. So that's one thing. And then, dosedmovie.com has some resources on there. People from the film can be found on one of the links. And obviously, if you want to watch Dosed, there would be links to each platform on there, as well as we'll be updating it to include the trailer for Dosed 2 and more information about that. We're going to keep that all on dosedmovie.com, at least for now. Seems like a nice home, considering that the topics are similar in nature. It just kind of worked out for us that we were able to like move in and do another documentary, and it happens to be also about psychedelics. So
Yeah. Awesome.
yeah.
Great. Well, I really appreciate you two coming on here. I hope we get to do it again when we're closer to the release of the film, and we could even do a live stream whenever we're ready. That would be lovely too.
Sounds great, Joe. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
All right. Well, until next time, thank you both.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you.
And there you have it, Nick and Tyler of the Dosed team. Really go watch Dosed. It's really good. I loved it. And I think everybody should watch it if you're interested in this field. It's just a very compelling and beautiful story. Scary at times, though. The main character does find her way through, which is extraordinary. All right. I think that's it for now. I hope y'all Had a great time listening to that, and I hope you do check out the film. If you want to support us, tell a friend about the show, or you can leave us a small monthly donation at patreon.com/psychedelics today. Or if you want to level up your education and get ready for this coming wave of psychedelic use and really big push for clinical use, we should really get ahead of it and start training now. So that is what navigating psychedelics for clinicians and therapists is for. It's to get you ready so you understand how to work with your clients or patients who are already doing this work or planning to in the near future. Doesn't matter if you're doing it with them or not. They're probably going to be doing this stuff anyway. So why not get ready to be able to serve your population? So learn more over at psychedeliceducationcenter.com, and I hope you enjoy it. Would really love you to join. It starts May 20. So you got about a month to sign up. Again, psychedeliceducationcenter.com. All right, everybody, this is Joe Moore signing off from Breckenridge, Colorado. We will see you on Friday. Bye-bye.